crafty friends, it's Ashley Pfeiffer, the maker behind Stamped AF. I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Canada, and for this month's Stamping Society tutorial, we are using our favorite new products. So I chose to use a couple of new things. So the Knit Together bundle, as a previous knitter, this just calls to me. So it's just a plain knit stitch, great background stamp, and then it's got these wonderful dies, so you can use the positive and the negative. So I chose to use the positive, and if you can see, it's a shaker card. Now I am going to do it just a tiny bit different this time because I used foam strips on this one, and you can see it's dipping down just a little bit. So I am going to use foam adhesive sheet this time. But I've used the tailor-made tags, which are in the annual catalog. I have used this gorgeous knit background. I've also used the new Words of Cheer. That is for the sentiment, but I masked off the S. And then there are some great dies in here. We've got Happy, we've got Cheer, and both of them have an outline. Now we are just going to use the Cheer with some silver foil. We're going to use the Snowflake folder from the wintry embossing folders, and I've got some gray granite. I've got a basic white side folding card base. We'll use it top folding. I've got some white to stamp my knit background on. We'll use the Stamparatus for that. I've got some of this amazing bedazzling I think it's DSP, but it is from Celebration and it is amazing. Like, not one single piece of this will come off. And you can see that's what I've used for the snowflakes, some of my shaker bits. Now inside I have the snowflakes. I have some of, there's a new set of sequins and a couple of rhinestones. So let's get to this. You can see that on this piece I've already die cut some of the snowflakes, but we're going to do more because that was my last one. Now I will mention you want to go back and forth because you can see that these two kind of got stuck in there. I am going to do this twice so that we have enough snowflakes to put on the outside and within the shaker bits. So let's do that first. We've got to stamp our background for this. Maybe I'll save my die cutting for after. So I'm going to start, I'm going to put just a tiny bit of seal down just so that my cardstock stays put. I don't want it lifting. Put it right in the corner just in case it does lift. Ink this up, and you should be able to get 2 tags from this. Now you can see I've got a bit of an air bubble there, so I'm going to give some extra pressure there. I do sometimes use a dry eraser to put a little bit more pressure, so it's easier on my hands. There's like a hair or something there. That'll be fine. We'll stay away from that part. Okay, so that part is done. We'll clean that up later. Okay, so now I can take my largest tag. See, you can get 2. I'm actually going to go, yeah, let's go that way. So we need, with this tag die, I need 1 in the basic white stamped, I need 1 in gray granite, and I need 1 in vellum. Okay, so I've got all 3 layers. And you might notice I have not put the little reinforcement on there. You really can't tell that. Once everything's put together, you wouldn't even know it's there or not. So I also want to keep this out because I'm going to do that foam adhesive sheet. But I don't want to go willy-nilly, so I am going to take a stitch rectangle and die cut my window, but I'm going to tape the 2 of them together so that when I go to die cut my foam, everything is exactly the way it should be. Now you're probably thinking, well, why don't you just adhere this to that? I find that if I die cut my cardstock well attached to that, I get more dipping than I want. And if you're new to my crafting, I don't like dipping. So for the stitched rectangle part, if if you're looking at all of the dies, I am taking the second one here in the more oblong, so that will cut out a good size window. So we'll take that out of our tag. And then when I go to do the next part, I will show you exactly what I'm doing. You might want to use a little bit of washi tape. Just a little bit. You want to have an even amount, basically an even border on the top and bottom, and then left to right. I know this is probably more tape than I need, but, and you could save this for another project. Now, when I was talking about not having a gap, like if I had die cut this and then stamped it, I would have a big gap around my stitching. So this way it is a solid, pattern. It's almost like it's DSP. There's no gap. I do find when I use washi tape, I get a little bit of adhesive on my paper. So you can just take an adhesive eraser and get rid of that little bit of sticky. Okay, so now what I want to do, I've got a little bit more on the top, like there's more room on the bottom, sorry, than the top. So this is exactly why I want to go and tape these two together now, because I want this to be exact. And we might need a longer piece of washi tape. And when you're trying to fit this in, it will kind of lock into place. Now, I don't want to push on the cardstock because I don't want that getting reattached. It may, but we can easily pull it off. Okay, we'll tape those two together and these two together. I'm sure I got it attached there. So see, this now gives me, with that on top, this will be exact. So let's tape it on there. This piece is really sticky, so it, well, okay, maybe not. So the other thing that this does is it gives us a great well for our shaker bits. And this way, like I said, there's not going to be any dipping. Take this piece out. I want to leave that release paper, so I'm just going to attach this here because why not? Close. So now we can adhere these two. I would suggest taking this bit out before you put your tag in. Either dig it out or push it out. Get it off me. Okay, so we want to put, let's just put it on the vellum for now. This is the trickiest part, is getting it not to stick to you. So I would start by lining up the top edges and then putting the rest down. Now, if it's not perfect, like there's a little bit of vellum that's coming down this end versus that one, that's okay. We could always trim it off if we need. But look at that, it's perfect. So now what we're going to do, we'll leave that release paper on for now. I just want to give you one more peek at our little, not really a mechanism, but it is the best way to ensure that everything is going to line up just so. If you want to make sure that they line up perfectly, then take that extra time and you won't have to do it this way. But you never know when your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine is going to move something on you. So I find this is the more reliable way. So now I need to take my dazzling paper with my snowflakes. I'm going to cut out 2 sets of them. I'm also going to grab my new sequins and a couple of rhinestones. And these do pop out quite easily, but I find that they don't pop out on their own. Like, you do have to use something. This is a thick paper, so that's why I recommend going through. Like, having done what I just did, I'm not having a fight with them like I did with these two. To be honest, I didn't even try to get those ones out because they're just gonna rip. See? So back and through. And then these are the subtle shimmer sequins. So there is matte, there's translucent, there's like a pearlescent, there's silver. It is such a great pack of sequins. Pop these guys out. And I'm going to keep 5 of these or so out for the front of the card. So the rest of them can go on the inside. And usually I don't like to do it this way where I have to put everything down and try and figure it out. But that is the way that I did it. If I hadn't peeled the top release paper, I could have done it differently, but I did not. So we are going to put everything kind of on here. Actually, let's start with the rhinestone. And you're not going to see a whole lot of the shaker bits in here, but when you start to play with it a little bit, or the recipient starts to play with it a little bit, they will see those pieces. I have less room to work with this time than I did the first time. So maybe what I'll do, so that I know I'm staying within the confines of the shaker card, is just lay that piece over top. So now we've got our rhinestones in the right places. I don't like that there's one big and one small, but again, you're not going to see much of it. You get the idea of it being back there. So now we'll put in our sequins, and you don't need a lot. Especially because the snowflakes are going to take up some of the room. Now I'm probably not going to be able to use as many as I did the first time around because I only have this rectangle to work with. The first time I had my foam strips and it allowed more room. So let's put 5 of them in there. That ought to be enough. And then we've got some extra if we want. Remove this release paper. Now make sure you're not forgetting anything at this point because you're not going to get this thing back off. Again, line up the top. And once you get that part lined up, it would be pretty difficult to not be able to line up the rest of it. Give it a good burnish. And there we go. So not as much room to shake, but you also know that these are never coming out of there. Whereas with this, I'll give you a tip though. What I do to make sure that nothing's going to come out is I run a line of my liquid adhesive. Really drives me crazy that this is dipping down, but if I pull it too hard, I might release all my shaker bits. But I do run a line of liquid adhesive in there so that it secures that foam strip. Okay, so now we can put this piece on. Use liquid glue. I know that takes a little bit longer to dry with vellum. You don't want to go crazy because you don't want this eking out all over your shaker. And when I'm working with vellum, I do like to give it a good burnish to make sure all of that glue is making contact. So we can set that aside for a bit and start working on the other pieces. Now with this cheer piece, I am going to use silver foil, which is part of a new trio. And I have adhesive paper on the back because I don't want to be messing with these. Now you can see there's not enough for the whole, for all the letters. So what you can do is take I cut this down to 6 by 6, so you can take a piece and just cut the whole thing off and put your adhesive. But I've got another little offcut here that I'm going to use. So I've just got little bits and pieces of my adhesive sheets. So I'm going to trim that down to about 1/2 inch, 5/8 of an inch. And that ought to be enough. So you can see there's that seam there. I just need to push down. There isn't enough width for this to go on that piece, otherwise I would. So we'll do the CHE and part of that other E. And then I'll do the other part on here. So now these just become stickers. We can peel the backing off and stick them on. I do recommend dry fitting them to make sure that you get an even amount of space between. Make sure they all fit. Usually when I'm putting letters down, I will use a T square or an L square, but because this is on the tag already, that would be pretty hard to do. Give them a good press to make sure that they're fully adhered. That C is a little close to the edge. I probably could have gone a little bit further with the R, but that will do. We'll stamp holiday on this little piece of cardstock, and then we can start with the rest. I don't know why I did it this way. Usually I would start with a card base and work my way to this part, but the last 2 weeks or so I've been going in like some kind of backwards order. I don't know what's up. So we're gonna take this holidays. This drives me crazy. These magnetic sheets are not as strong as they used to be. These are just from Dollar Tree. Okay, holidays. So like I said, we're not going to use the S, and we can heat emboss it, or we can just use Whisper White. If you don't want to go through the trouble of adding your embossing powder and heat setting it, you can just use basic white or Whisper White, but note that it won't be as solid. Now to mask this, you can tape that S so that it doesn't get any ink, or you can just try to avoid it. Try to wipe any away. Now I did close crop this, so there are a couple of different ways. And if you don't get it right the first time, try again. I think I wiped away part of the Y when I was getting rid of the S, but do you see that? There's no ink on the S, I hope. That just made the cardstock. Now with Whisper White, you can actually still add embossing powder to this. Okay, so the next step is to take our gray granite card mat. So this is 4 by 5 1/4, and we're going to emboss it. Now the problem with this is that this folder is only 3 inches wide, so we're going to have to do it twice. So the point of having this ribbon and the sentiment there is that it kind of covers the seam. So if you don't want to have it so low down, then move your folder up just a little bit, and you can always see what you're going to get. You can move it around until you're happy with the placement. And this is a 3D folder, so we are going to need our 3D plate, but this won't fit through the mini because we've got this extra piece hanging out. So we still need the full-size Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And you may have noticed that it's not a continuing pattern. Like this doesn't get picked up somewhere on this side. So now I've got this weird little seam in there, but what I can do is I'm going to flip it around this time because I don't want, like if I get this big snowflake, I don't want it to be right there again. So now I'm going to move it around. You need it to go all the way to the end. So now our seam is going to have this snowflake twice, but never fully. Okay, so now I'm just gonna put that through. I want to show you, because this is so far over, the only thing you have to watch out for is that it's within the 6 inches of your platform. So this does just fit. If you went farther over, you wouldn't be able to get it through your machine, unless you have a wider machine. Okay, so there's our embossing. We do get a weird little seam, but again, that's why we're putting the tag where we are. I don't remember it being quite so pronounced the first time, but it is what it is. Okay, so now we can decide if we want this up or down. So you can see that most of mine are debossed. I chose to have it bottom down, but we could do it embossed this time. Let's do it. Let's give it a go. Now, whenever I do any kind of dry embossing, I like to use liquid adhesive. I don't like to use an adhesive runner because I feel like that flattens out my embossing. But you do you, my friend. Okay, so even borders on all 4 sides. We need to at least dry fit this so we know where it's going to go. There's no adhesive on here, so before we adhere anything, I'll take some of this glittered organdy ribbon. If you know about the glittered organdy black ribbon, or the black glittered organdy ribbon, this is the white version, and it is beautiful. It is in the new catalog, and stunning. And I think the best part is that the glitter doesn't come off. Remember the days where all the glitter came off of everything? Now this is backwards. I don't know about you, but I have to guess at this every single time. Just when I figure, oh, it has to go in through the front. Nope. I think when it's this kind of loop, like where you've got this, it needs to come in from the back. But then when I try to do that with a different ribbon, it's like, nope, needs to come in through the front. I've just got myself so confused. Okay, so I'm going to cut a little bit off of this, but not too much, because the ribbon will bend to go in the envelope. If you had a solid embellishment, it wouldn't be so forgiving, but this would bend. So you can adjust that. Don't pull too hard. You don't want to rip that shaker. Okay, we can go ahead and adhere that. I'm not popping it up because we already have the height of the foam adhesive sheets. Be generous with your glue. Okay, so we're going to use a couple of those subtle shimmer sequins again. We're going to add a couple of snowflakes. So what I'm going to do is just add a few drops. Not very big, because the center of these snowflakes are not that big. Whoa. Now you might be thinking, well, why don't you layer them and crisscross them? But they are a fairly solid and compact snowflake, so I found that when I did do that, you couldn't tell it was a snowflake anymore. Like it was too much. So 1, 2, 3, let's do 4, and let's put 1 on the tag itself. So now I'm just going to pick this up with my putty end. Let's start with the first one we did. And this will take a while to dry because, like I said, this paper is thick. Try and have them where they're not all going the same direction. Like that one's straight up and down, this one's angled, that one's angled, but it may. Now let's add a few sequins, so we can add 1. Maybe let's go for 7 with this. You always want odd numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So now I just want to pick out different colors. I don't want them all to be the same, like silver, or you can see this one's like a matte silver. It's beautiful. I guess more of a gray, but whatever. So I find that they stick, so I use my scissors and my putty end. You could probably also use glue dots for this in the same way that we have our adhesive backed sequins. I don't know, I prefer glue. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, and let's do one of these pearlescent ones. Dropped it. There we go. Now my last step before putting on this holiday, although it doesn't make or break it, is I'm going to take my chalk marker, and anytime I see one of these little dots, I'm just going to cover it, whether it's embossed or debossed. And there are quite a few of them. Totally optional, of course, but I found that it brought a little more attention to those dots. And just another point of interest. You may have to look at it a few times though, just to be able to see them. Okay, I think that looks good. So our last step is to take our gray granite Stampin' Write marker, and always, always, always do this from the back, because if you slide, you'll mess up the back, not the front. If I were to slip doing this from the front, I would have to start again. Not a big deal because it was only Whisper White ink, but your time is precious, so do it from the back. And then we're just gonna add a little bit of glue right here, just to that part of the tag. And that's it. Now, you can definitely see a difference between the heat embossed and just the stamped. It also could use a little bit of closer cropping. And I did not stamp anything on the inside because it's holiday cheer. It could be for anything really, right? But I hope that you enjoyed that. In case you didn't see my blog post, this was the card that I shared. So again, I stamped the tag with the knit background stamp. I used a lot of that dazzling cardstock on this one. I have a piece of Sahara sand that I just die cut my knit stitches in, I guess. And on the inside, I think the inside might be my favorite. Stamped that again. Got some of that paper. We've got winter when it's cold outside, but thoughts of you still keep me warm. We've got a little tree. So that was the negative, or I guess the positive from this. I've got a deer that was just in Sahara sand when I was cutting this out, colored that with my blends, and I've got this gorgeous ribbon. So I hope that you loved both of these projects, and we thank you so much for your support of the Stamping Society, and we'll see you again next month. Bye.